This is the third episode of my podimentary. Today we have a very special guest. His name is Dom. Dom is going to be speaking to us about Unity Gym, about mental health and about youth services, his journey from the beginning to the end, how it should change, who the actors are and why we should change it. He's had a lot of experiences which aid his youth work, so please keep your ears open. There's a lot of gems he drops. If anybody's in youth work and you feel like you're not doing the right job or you feel like you're not being allowed to do the right job, listen to what Dom has to say and contact him afterwards. I'll leave his details at the bottom. Peace and love, man.
Feels like hot ones. Huh? I said it feels like hot ones.
Yeah.
I love that shit.
Okay, today I'm with a guest, special guest. This man has been in this area and in my life for more than 20 years. From the youth club days from when I was a little youth to growing up to the age I'm at right now. He's been around. He's a shoe connoisseur. He's an artist, a youth worker, a man of the people, and a man who says it how it is. We've got Dom. Dom, thank you for coming, bro.
That's quite an introduction.
Exactly. I quickly had to get it. Fly with it. But yeah, I could tell the camera about you, your achievements, but sell yourself to me.
I would say I'm a self-employed / employed artist, like you said, a youth worker. I'm also an ambassador for my old secondary school. So I go in yearly and talk to either year 7s who are just starting or school leavers just before they go off to university. Or it could even be if the school is struggling with certain young people, they'll probably ring or email me and ask me if I could come in and kind of do talks. Other than that, just kind of a voice for the community.
So you're being humble there. There's a question I want to ask you about isolated moments. And this is within your experience of youth work. Okay. So the first question is, tell me about your relationship with youth work and start with whatever feels important and take it from there.
What got me into youth work really was, when I grew up in Shara, and at the time we had one youth club. It was called The Hub, which was effectively like an Afro-Caribbean centre that was run by, for me, in my opinion, arguably some of the best youth workers, I've ever worked or worked under, and really that was the first inkling that if I was going to do something when I was older, I would like to take a piece of what those youth workers taught me and inject that into what I would do when I was of age to be able to work with young people. And we had that centre for a long we had that probably from when I was about 11 maybe up to the age of about 14, 15. And then some things happened within Sheffield politics and the centre kind of deceased, and everybody kind of either got made redundant or shipped off into different areas of the council. So after that we was kind of left with, there wasn't really no provision for us as young men at the time in the area, and as a result we were obviously getting involved in elements of low level to mid-level crime, and whether it were, I don't know, joyriding cars or petty theft or whatever. But as a result, at that time, it was kind of like, it was really the birth of not saying that we was like the first or pioneers, but for us at that time, we never really knew about gangs and all that kind of stuff prior. And us as friends and a peer group in Shara and Broomall and whatever, we kind of formulated our own little crews and give ourselves names. We were gallivanting across town and Meadowall and the arcades and all that kind of stuff. And stuff kind of escalates quickly when you're within an area that doesn't really offer much.
Is it right to say while growing up, that's when niche?
Yeah. But that was definitely around. But at these times we were like 14, 15. So that was kind of just before it. There was olders on the block who were obviously going to them sort of places. But at that time we was making our own mark. You know what I mean? So, either the older people were doing what we were doing or they weren't, but we were obviously trying to make our own name, so to speak. But as a result of that, like going through, 14, 15, 16, and getting to, you know, final years in school and whatnot. Sadly, people that were obviously my friends or, you know, in rival crews or whatever, people started to lose their life, you know what I mean? It was either, you know, knife crime or gun crime. And that, for myself, luckily, it was a wake-up call, you know what I mean? It was like, I don't really want to go down that route, and stuff started to escalate a bit close to home. And you know, thankfully in that time, and like when I was like the year prior to finishing school, my mum was in a bit of a better position, and I kind of said to my mum, like, we need to move out of Sharrow, because if we don't, I could very easily end up in the same route as a few other young people. So my mum kind of moved us out of the area. I'd made a decision for myself that, like, if I was to leave, then I have to kind of cut that off, you know what I mean? And that's what I did.
And I fully respect that, because it takes a level of self-awareness to realise.
100%.
But a lot of people, I feel like, don't, or are attempting to have that self-awareness, but they can't identify the reasons they want to move. What would you say in that environment made you think, you know what, I know how you said there's crime and people losing lives and specific things, but what made you wake up quicker than those around you?
I didn't want to go to jail, and I didn't want to end up dead. It's as simple as that. But on top of that, I think another very important thing is obviously your family network as well. Yeah. Like, because for me growing up, let's just say, for example, there was like, you know, 15 young black males. Out of the 15 of us, probably only 5 of us had our dads present. And maybe out of those 5 who had the dads present, there was only really 1 of us that had their dad still living in that same household. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, when we're messing around on the neighborhood, and I'm not even trying to say this like in a disrespectful manner, but the discipline like from your mum is not necessarily the same as like what it would be from your dad.
I agree.
And I grew up in a single parent household with my mum, but like I said, my dad was obviously present in my life. And my dad he's a well-known guy, you know what I mean? So growing up, I understood very quickly the importance of my name, and not my first name, my surname, because I carried my father's name, and he's known in Sheffield. So I had to learn very quick that whatever I did, if that got back to him, that's a whole heap of hurt, you know what I mean, coming my way. But aside from that, I had an auntie. It was my nana and sister. And 2 years prior to me finishing secondary school, she ended up getting diagnosed with cancer. But to me, she's like my guardian angel, innit? So in the last year of school, they effectively said that there's nothing they can do. It's effectively just making her comfortable. And she ended up living in St. Luke's Hospice that was not far from High Stores as well. So in the final year of school, my head's already mashed up. I'm in a peer group where it's almost like F school, it's not important. My aunt, she's dying from cancer, and I'm just a young man, you know what I mean? So I'm struggling to deal with all of these different emotions. And at that moment in time, the most important thing was me trying to spend as much time as I could like with my aunt. So I actually used to go to school, sign in, leave school, walk to the hospice, chill with my auntie, and then I used to go back to school to get on a school bus to go back to Sharrow. And it worked for a little bit, and obviously school cut and done, and they obviously rang my mum and said, like, he's been missing school, and I had to just say that's what I was doing. Because even my auntie, she backed it, she didn't never said nothing. Because I would make sure I would leave before like my mum or my nana and that, when they finished work, they would go there to visit, so I'd make sure I'd leave first. But I just remember like in her last weeks and whatnot, she just kind of said to me, because she could see, like, even though I won't say I was a bad youth, and I don't ever claim to be a bad man or anything like that. I was just mixing amongst my peer group, and we was just doing a madness at a young age. And she just made me promise. She just said, whatever you end up doing, just make sure you sort yourself out and you do something kind of positive. And that's literally from that day. That was the main thing. She lasted about another 2 weeks. She passed away, and that's just kind of always been the motive, is just to use my experiences, both in education and the community, in terms of what I what I witnessed and what I went through, and then just trying to channel that into something productive in terms of like giving back for young people. And it's not even necessarily just young people. It's it's anybody. It's adults, anybody who needs their help or general advice, really.
I'm going to ask you a question and be strictly honest, yeah? What makes good youth work and what has youth work become now?
What makes good youth work? You know what it is that I've kind of always been a stickler for this. And again, I don't want to kind of disrespect anybody who's out there who's probably in the profession or wanting to get in the profession or anything like that. But I can only obviously really speak for myself and my experiences and I've worked in near enough every single youth centre there is in Sheffield. I've represented maybe 3 or 4 of the top youth work providers within the Sheffield city. But for me, the most important thing is life experience. I mean, like you've not necessarily just got to be from effectively the community that you're working in and wanting to impact change, but you've got to want to. You know what I mean? You've got to want to work with young people, not necessarily just like doing it for the salary. You know what I mean? I think sometimes, and even people go to university and do a university degree in youth work or whatever it might be, psychology and whatever, and that's wicked, more power to you. And in a way, you can just climb the ladder a little bit faster to what you want to do, and that's your motive. You know what I mean? That's what you're doing. But for me, I never growing up was like, bam, I'm gonna be a youth worker. I didn't. It was just something that I fell into. You know what I mean? Like I said, we left the area. Circumstances changed. Housing and whatnot. We had to move back to Sharrow, and then when I moved back, this is like, and within that time, there's been about 5 or 6 years gap where I've left Sharrow, left the old group, returned. So when I come back, it's like Groundhog Day. Everything's still the same. There's still no youth provision. There's still nobody really doing anything constructive.
For you, it was a passion. Your journey took you to youth work to give back. But if you speak to a lot of people in the community, they've seen lots of organisations come in, probably because they've received some funding. There's these new youth workers that show up and disappear the next day. How have you experienced that while working alongside young people? Because you've done a lot of youth work and you must have seen them come and go. Yeah,
I've seen many people come and go. I've seen many organisations come and go. Me, myself, and the likes of like Saeed, who runs Unity, and Will, and Andy, we've been around from 2000 and for me personally, I've been around since 2009, 2010 maybe. And along that journey, as well as doing youth work, we've got other aspects of our life where, we've got other things going on and our other jobs or whatever. But Broome Hall has always remained like a centre focus of something that, whether it takes us 2 minutes or it takes us the next 20 years for us to achieve something positive, that's what we would do. No one's forcing us. No one's give us the lottery and said you can do this and you can do that. Anything that we have done, we've done it, effectively on the bare minimum, or it's beg, borrow, steal to get certain projects, off the ground. But in that time, we've seen other people that have come in and, they've managed to blag X amount of thousands because they're going to do this and they're going to do that, and they come in and they don't deliver, or they need us to help deliver their work so they can effectively take the brownie points, which I've seen tons of times. Even the organisations that I've worked for, I went to an area where there isn't any faces like mine in this community. They were struggling with getting young people to engage and disengage from, at the time, it was like car theft, motorbike theft, and just general antisocial behaviour. I went there, not knowing the area, not knowing anybody there. I went, rocked up on the park, had a look around for the first day, saw a couple of young people. At first, they didn't want to engage because obviously they don't know my face. And I just said, look, I'm going to be coming on the area every week. I'm going to bring some footballs, basketballs, whatever. And if you want to play some football. Cool. If you don't, fine. And that wasn't me as going there representing an organization. That was me just going there my own self. Obviously, I'm going on the company's behalf, but at that time, I'm wanting these young people to see who I am, you know what I mean, and relate with myself. It took about 2 weeks, bro. I went up there every week. I went to Decathlon, bought a big bag, put footballs in it, cones, went up there. 2 weeks later, we started getting, 5, 6, 7, a couple more kids. But what made it beautiful, was prior, when kids used to play on that park, it was the older boys, and the older boys wouldn't give the younger ones a chance. Yeah. Whereas I'm going there and I'm like, look, everybody's involved. So I'm getting the kids, getting the big ones. And the hardest thing is, because I work with so many young people, I forget people's names easy. But my little party trick is I give everybody nicknames. So, but it's almost like celebrity nicknames. Mainly, it'll be like the football world. So I might see, I don't know, a kid with brown moppy hair or whatever, and he does a little flick. I'll be like, yes, Messi, you're good. And straight away, the other kids, they're like, I don't know, they're warm to it. So they're like, I want a nickname. And, I'm calling them all, Billy Sharp or whoever it is, you know what I mean? I'm just ringing out names. But that's a good way to break them barriers straight away, so they're more receptive to obviously want to engage. And we changed the ethos in that community. They no longer had their backs up against the walls about obviously workers like myself coming in and doing work. The effective crime rate within them hours that we was in the park was clearly reducing. Crime commissioners was happy, local community police, everybody was happy. After that, it went in the paper saying, this is work that's being done. There wasn't one single mention about myself or my colleague who'd gone to do the work. It was the organization has done that. So that's where my back up against the wall about certain things like you said, where organizations will come in or, certain funding projects or whatever, and they'll say they can do this and they can do that. That's where that relates to. And you've been present in certain meetings, like if police might come in and say, we're trying to do this and we've got this pot of money and we're thinking about, giving it. It shouldn't be a matter of thinking about it. You should just give the money. You know what I mean? My argument has always been you'll have organizations like Unity, for example, who effectively have to go into the same funding streams as these giant organizations who are backfed, and they get the contracts, without probably even without signing the dotted line. You know what I mean? It's just the way it is. Sure. But they will only really do, 5% of the 100% that is required. Whereas you can have a smaller organization who have nowhere near the resources, but can deliver nearly 90% on much less, because these are the actual people who are really about wanting to impact change. Whereas the other ones, it's just about ticking boxes. You know what I mean? And that's where the clear divide is.
We know mental health services in this city and nationwide is not as good as we want it to be. Have you always had the support you needed, or have you felt there's times in your journey where you felt like, you know what, fuck this, I don't want to do this anymore? What's made you continue, so?
You know what it is? I don't want to be negative in it. I don't want to say that I didn't have the opportunity, because the truth of the matter is I didn't seek it. I didn't seek the support, and that's more so because of the community that I come from. And I don't mean the area where I come from, I just mean me coming from a black mixed background. It's not really something that's ever really been spoken about until the last few years, where it's become more of let's say a public movement. It's now widely spoken about, and it's more open for people to kind of speak about their own feelings.
So for the young ones out there watching right now that feels like it may relate to you in a moment, what moment can you give to them and tell them that this is how I went through this? Or
if I take it back, I've suffered with anxiety and depression dating back to when I said at the beginning about my auntie passing away, because that was different. I couldn't process that, and also peer group people, witnessing somebody die as well. It's traumatic. So going through all of those things, and then me being who I am as a person, of kind of like, I always want to help other people. So you imagine all my life, I've just kind of helped other people and took on other people's, issues and drama and helped them fix themselves. But really all I was doing, I was just mounting this pressure on myself and like not really dealing with my own situation. So for years and years, I just dealt with it in silence. Like none of my family knew. And I'm very good at masking emotion anyway. So like I can have a smile on my face, but inside it's completely different. Whereas now that's not the case now. And this was 2 years prior to COVID happening. I hit rock bottom with it. I went to the doctors and they put me on like this kind of rehabilitation course for like 9 weeks. And in that time, I obviously had to I created like a WhatsApp group on my phone, and I didn't want to just go to people individually and say, this is what's happening. So I literally just got like all my closest family members and friends and told everybody at the same time. I was like, I don't want no sympathy, I don't want nothing. I just want you guys all to know where my head's at, and I'm going to be on a journey from now to fix that. And it's never really something that you kind of you don't get rid of it. It's not like you can just click your fingers and it's gone, but you find ways of being able to control it where, the negative stages don't really surface their head. And I think for me and young people, that's what the important factor is, because I'm someone who's going through or I've been through similar situations. I feel like I'm in a good position to be able to help and support young people with it. And even even if I'm going into schools, or like I am now, I'm talking on camera, I would say the biggest thing is just don't lock it up. Don't lock it up. Like I did that for too many years is what I would say. I think if you are not confident enough to be able to say it with a parent, or whoever your guardian might be, I would say look for the next person in terms of your youth worker and have that kind of conversation in a safe environment, or even school. If you're at school, just if you've got a teacher that you like, you explain to that teacher. But the important thing is to talk about it.
This is going to sound controversial. I have come to the conclusion that youth work, or helping people in ends, or trying to help them, in ways to increase their social mobility, for example, move up. Young people, crime, a lot of it's rooted in money. Do you think youth work should take a more entrepreneurial route, get more young people finding ways to make money a legit way, or having those who've achieved positions like lawyers and stuff stunt in front of them, pull up in their nice cars and they ask, oh, what'd you do? Lawyer, that representation. Yeah. Do you think youth work should take a look into that, or there should be a branch of youth work that's more entrepreneurial?
Well, funny you said that, because my whole thing for the 13 years I've been a youth worker, and anytime we've sat around big tables and with big wigs who were talking about how to change, or how can we do this, how can we reduce crime, and my thing has always been there needs to be a bridge between school and youth centres and facilities. There shouldn't be a gap that's so far apart that kids can finish school at 3, enter a youth club at 6, 7 o'clock, and within that time frame, there's a lot of time spent for antisocial behaviour and for them to get, effectively like county lines and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of time within that time frame for them to get, manipulated into certain situations. And the same that if you do have a youth club, really, if you look at youth clubs, in an area might open twice a week for an hour and a half, and then other less fortunate areas, due to money and whatnot and their own politics, you might get a youth club for an hour a week. So that's a lot of time in a week where you're not engaging with those young people. So my whole thing has always been there needs to be that bridge where you can either have youth workers that go into schools to work with young people who school is struggling, to engage with. So you're working with them consistently on a Monday to Friday basis, and you've got provision outside in the community where you can say, look, come after school, we can go there. So like what you're saying in terms of lawyers and stuff like that, my whole thing is from a public school aspect is that there's things in school that should be taught that isn't taught. If you was asking me what the ideal scenario was, it would be a youth centre where I could have educational programs that would teach young people about business, it would teach young people about law, it would give them the basics about police, all your rights, and then and they would kind of be like the core ones. But then I would ask young people, like, what do you want to learn about? And then we would set up a program where young people can learn about that in the youth facility. So it's not about just coming and playing table tennis. And don't get me wrong, some kids want to just come and socialize and get away from whatever it is they want to get away from. So it's not like I'm trying to make it into like a boarding school, for example. But going back to boarding school, that difference between public school and private school, you could go into them private schools, and the three things that I would like as topics in a youth centre is taught in their normal curriculum in a private school. You don't get that in public school. So that's the reason why there's always going to be that element of divide. So if you've already got a system that's broke in terms of the public school, and they're only getting what they're fed, basically, and then they're going back to communities where really, let's say for example, the kids are coming home to parents who went through that same system. You know what I mean? So I think, especially like from Broomhall, I can only talk about areas where I come from. There's only a handful that I know of successful parents of kids I know, you get me? And the rest of them, they're the same, like you and I, you know what I mean? They work normal jobs, or they've gone to university themselves and they managed to, like my mum. And this is really the fundamental of obviously why I try my best at helping other young people, and I continue. And you say, what makes a good youth worker? But what really makes a good youth worker is you never turn off.
You never turn off.
You know what I mean? Some youth workers do it as if you go to your job, you do a 9 to 5. Yeah. As soon as that 5 o'clock comes, boom, you get home, take off the suit or whatever, you eat your tea, and you do you. Yeah. Whereas for me, as a youth worker, someone who's been around young people, it never stops. It doesn't matter where I am. It doesn't matter whether I'm at home. It doesn't matter whether I'm in the supermarket or I go to Meadowall. I've always got my youth worker head on. Yeah. So I always have to think about how I represent myself anywhere I go. Because for certain young people, I am their, I don't know, what would you say?
Role model. No, definitely role model.
I don't want to say role model because that's...
But it is role model.
Like an egotistic thing.
It isn't. I think that's the problem with it. You have to. Because those with egotistical tendencies that are doing the wrong things will say it to them. Yeah. And those young people internalize it, so scream it from the rooftops, man. Yeah. I definitely believe that, but you've been doing it anyways just by people watching you, like I was saying growing up. You said something to me time ago, and I remembered it recently when I was thinking of this podcast, and you were saying how many people in ends are football players. You were saying, you mentioned I think Kyle Walker. Yeah. Did you know Kyle Walker growing up? You was in the same ends and you grew up together. You saw people make it and other people not. But you said there were people just as good or even better than Kyle Walker around you.
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%. But you know what it was, yeah? And this is the thing that I have to say with Kyle, and this is going back to my statistic on dad's present. And he was like one. He was the 1% who had his mum and his dad was there, you get me? So, he could come out and he was playing with us and playing footballs. This is the thing, like, obviously you could tell when we were playing football and was playing on, whether we was playing on the park or was playing actual games of football, you could tell with Kyle, there was something there. Like if one of us was going to make it, it was going to be him, you get me? And he was obviously in the United from early doors when he was young. And he used to come play football with us at like Black Pitch. And his dad used to come down. Sometimes his dad would come down and he'll get cussed because he was playing football with us. And his dad was like, why are you going to risk getting injured in like just a simple knockaround that could obviously prevent you. Like if you got injured, you've got to wait X amount of months until you're fit. So, yeah, that's what I mean. Dad's present. His dad was, like from our perspective when we was young, we were like, Rod, Cal's dad's militant. You get me? Like he ain't going to let him do nothing. Like, but look where he is now. You get me? That hard work and dedication of sticking at it, and you've decided I want to be a footballer, and look where he is. You know what I mean? He's playing for one of the best clubs, if not the best club in the world. He's been playing at the top level for as long as I can remember. You know what I mean? There's a big difference between having a dream and having a goal.
But yeah, thank you for coming. Dom, everybody. You can tell from the way he's answering and the whole stories that everything.
Hey, there might even be a part 2, you never know, man. 'Cause I can go for days, man. I can go for days. There's so many things I could talk about. It's mad.
No, 100%. Really. But
It's
thank
wicked.
you, man. I'm gonna.
Thank you very much, man.
Into it.
Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And guys, this is Dom.